Will the Oregon Ducks be the fourth straight Big Ten champion? Let's break it down. And we're going to continue our college football prediction series where I break down what the team has lost, what they return, what they add, and by the end of the video, give you an exact record prediction. And we continue today with the Oregon Ducks. Welcome in. I'm John Barry, your host. And the Oregon Ducks last year were a very, very good team. You made the college football playoff semifinals after losing only one game all regular season and only two games all year. And those games were both to the eventual champion, the Indiana Hoosiers. Breaking down what you lost some really good O linemen. Alex Harkey and Isaiah World were very good, and then Emmanuel Pregnon was great. You lost three really, really high quality linemen, and that has to be stated. You also lost some really good receiver options. Your top wide receiver, Malik Benson, in terms of yardage, is gone. Your top tight end, first round pick, Kenyon Sadiq, arguably the best tight end in America last year, is also gone. You also lost some running backs, including Noah Whittington, who was your leading rusher. Defensively, though, not a ton of key losses. Bryce Betcher had been one of your best linebackers for a few years now, dual sport athlete, really good tackler. And then Dylan Thieneman, first round pick, had been a transfer from Purdue at safety. He was probably second best safety in America to Caleb Downs. That is a big loss. But then when you're returning offensively, some really, really good pieces. Dante Moore chose to come back. He could have probably been the number 2 pick in the NFL draft. I think he's the best quarterback in America. You return to Corian Moore, who outside of Malachi Toney, maybe the best true freshman wide receiver in all of college football last year. He was the number 1 recruit in terms of wide receivers last year, 5-star guy. Now going into sophomore season should be dangerous. You return Jamari Johnson at tight end, who's taking the place of Kenyon Sadiq, and many think is now taking his place also as the best tight end in America, potential first-round pick. Jeremiah McClellan is there at receiver. Star center Iapani Lalulu is coming back, arguably the best center in America, in my opinion. He is. Evan Stewart didn't play all of last year, played 2 years ago. He was a former 5-star wide receiver, transferred from A&M, showed a lot of promise, injured, missed all last season. Now he's back, gives you another wide receiver threat. And then Jordan Davison and Jair Hill, not wrong Hill, Dyer Hill, are going to be there at running back for you as a little 1-2 punch that forms one of the best running back tandems and running back rooms in the Big Ten. And then defensively, also a ton returns, namely on the defensive line, where Amari Washington could have been a first-round pick. Instead, he's back starting in the defensive front. Mateo Uyangale could have been late first, early second-round pick. Instead, he's starting at defensive end. Bear Alexander, also one of the best run stoppers, back at defensive line. Not to mention Tuioti, one of the best outside linebackers, defensive end hybrids, pass rush guys, also back. So fierce front four in terms of experience, talent, and proven production. And then I also mentioned Brandon Finney was a true freshman All-American at corner, had a pick six in, what was that, the Texas Tech game, I think, was the big one, or maybe it was the Indy. I'm missing one game. Brandon Finney made a huge play, though, in the college football playoff, I think against Texas Tech. He's back for a sophomore season to be probably one of the best cornerbacks in America. And then you also made some key additions. Coy Parrott comes in as, I think, a perfect replacement for Dylan Thieneman, following a similar career path of under-recruited, becomes an elite safety at a lower-tier Big Ten school. He was at Minnesota and now is transferring to Oregon and has a chance to be one of the best safeties in America. I think he's a perfect replacement. You also got Williams, another safety. Bennett, O-lineman transfer from, I think, Yale, I think, actually. And then some freshman 5-stars, Jalen Law, Aya Nacho on the O-line, Washington. I don't know how much they'll play in year one, but they're no doubt talented. And I think talented is the right way to describe Oregon, because are there question marks? No doubt. When you lose your offensive coordinator to become the head coach at Kentucky, or your defensive coordinator to become the head coach at Cal, there's a bit of questions there. But you also return so much. And when I can just say, I think you have the best quarterback, I think you have the best defensive line, I think you have one of the best receivers and running back rooms, overall weapons, and I think you have the best tight end, I think you have the best safety. There's a ton to love about this Oregon team. It's maybe the most talented roster Dan Lanning has had in his entire time in Eugene, which is saying a lot. They've got a real shot at the national championship. But let's take a look at the schedule. So here is the schedule. I think it's on this side. And Oregon actually has a pretty difficult, relatively speaking, non-conference. Because you start with Boise State, who there is a case to be made is one of the best, I guess it's now group of 6 teams. They now play in the Pac-12. And a couple of years ago, if you remember, Oregon, the team that ended up being the number 1 seed in the college football playoff, people were concerned because they gave up a bunch of sacks in like game 1 to Oregon. Dylan Gabriel, it did not look good. Ended up working out fine for him, and I do think you're going to get the win here. Look, I think Boise's a pretty good, maybe, I don't think they're best, but they're a pretty good group of 6 team. Max Madsen's a good quarterback, but this is Oregon we're talking about, and I just went, pretty in-depth of how great I think they are. Then at Oklahoma State, underrated, one of the best non-conference games, if you ask me, in terms of intrigue, right? Maybe it's a blowout like it was last year when Oregon absolutely crushed them. That's a possibility, and I acknowledge that. But I think Oklahoma State has some pretty good value and is going to be pretty good here. When you talk about Drew Mestemaker coming in, maybe he's a first round NFL type quarterback. Caleb Hawkins, maybe he's an All American running back. Wyatt Young, he could be first team All Big 12. Like, there's playmakers. This North Texas team was legitimately good. Eric Morris is a legitimately good coach, and they're at home. I think they are going to be competitive. Now, do I think they'll actually win or anything like that? No, I think Oregon is going to beat them. I'm just saying it's tougher than I think people would think it would be. Portland State, this is also going to be a win. I don't think much needs to be said there. And then you go on the road into what is one of your tougher games all season long at USC. Lincoln Riley and company need a big win this season. Jaden Maeva returns for them at quarterback. They have playmakers on the outside in Anderson and Hines, and Waymon Jordan is back at running back. They did face a bit of a blow on the O-line with Ethan O'Connor being ruled out for a season. And of course, the question with USC is always going to be defense as long as Lincoln Riley's the coach. Now they've brought in Gary Patterson, who's just another in a long list of names Lincoln Riley's brought in to fix his defense problem. None have been able to do it so far, and I think it probably is going to exist, maybe less so, but definitely when you verse an elite offense. And I think Oregon, when you have the best quarterback in the country with the weapons they have in Johnson and Corian Moore and Evan Stewart back and Iverson Hooks, like, I think that's going to be an elite offense, and I think Oregon in a shootout beats USC before they go into their first, or actually only bye week of the year and get a break. Speaking of taking a break, let's take a quick moment to talk about my new college football stock market simulator. It's a game I just made free to play, and every Power 4 team is set at an initial stock price. Think a team is undervalued? Simple. Invest and watch them go up over the course of the year if they perform better than they're supposed to. The goal is to make the most money by the end. You can play in private leagues with your friends or compete on the global leaderboard. I'll have links and stuff down below for anyone to play and try out. And if you guys enjoy it, or if you don't, make sure to let me know what you think. With that being said, back to the video. Off the bye, you are at home now against the other Los Angeles team, UCLA. I think this is a win. Nico was really inconsistent last year, and yes, UCLA, when they beat Penn State, did they have a moment? Is Bob Chesney an upgraded coach? Is Wayne Knight playmaker at running back? Like, I don't think they're terrible, but you have to be, how should I say? I guess Oregon is not going to lose a home game in an upset like this. If you're going to beat Oregon on the road, at least for me to pick it, you're going to have to be a top-tier college football team akin to what Indiana, the eventual national champion, did last year. I'm not just picking UCLA or Nebraska to beat Oregon at home. And I think Anthony Colandrea could be pretty good. I think Nebraska is decent in the trenches. I think they can play with Oregon and maybe not get absolutely demolished, but they can't win. And then you go on the road to Illinois, who I think is taking a step back this year. Luke Altmaier, of course, is gone. Caden Hauser coming in from East Carolina, where he was good. But I think that's probably a downgrade, and I don't think you have the defensive talent you've had past years like a Gabe Jukas. I think running back room's a little worse. And overall, I think Brett Bielema has a fine team, but not to the level what he's had the past few years. And even those teams were not on par with Oregon, and this might be Dan Lanning's best team yet. This is a win, and then, like I said, for the other two home games, Northwestern on the road in Autzen Stadium, it's not going to happen. You start 8-0 before what is undeniably, in my opinion, your toughest game of the year going on the road to Ohio State. We know who they are, the Buckeyes. They've got Ryan Day, Julian Sayin, Jeremiah Smith, everything you want to challenge Oregon, and you are on the road late in November in Columbus in the shoe. This is a brutal game, and it's not one the Ducks can't win, but it's hard to pick against Ohio State at home. And Ohio State has a brutal schedule themselves. If you already saw my Ohio State prediction, one, you know I did pick the Buckeyes to win and give Oregon a loss here, but you also saw how tough their schedule was, and I talked about in the Ohio State video. When you verse top teams on the road, like Ohio State does with Texas, like they do with Indiana, it's pretty tough to pick against a top 5 team at home, and Ohio State is a team of that caliber. You're just not going to lose this game very often. It's possible, but I would not predict it. I think Oregon loses, but bounces back against my Michigan Wolverines, unfortunately, who I think they will get a signature year in year one under Kyle Whittingham between the likes of Ohio State, Oregon, Indiana, Oklahoma. I think they can get one. I don't think Oregon's going to be the one they get. And then you play the other Michigan team, who I think is going to be one of the worst teams in the conference next to Purdue. That's a win for Oregon before finishing with your rival Washington Huskies, who I think could be a sneaky dark horse playoff team. And I would not be surprised if there's playoff implications in this game of if Washington wins, are they in the college football playoff? I could see that being the scenario, and this being a crazy environment on rivalry weekend between maybe two Heisman contenders. Like, I would not be surprised if Dante Moore and Damon Williams are both in Heisman contention. It's something I hope for, and I think this could sneakily be one of the best games on the schedule by the time we get to the end of the year. That being said, if it is that, I expect Washington to end and leave Oregon disappointed with a loss. If their playoff hopes are on the line in this game, I don't think they get it. I think the Ducks are finishing the season 11-1. Now we'll see if I put them in the Big Ten championship. And I think, just doing math in my head, I don't think I can, because I picked them to lose to Ohio State. And if you saw the Ohio State Indiana game prediction videos, I think the tiebreakers are not going to be in Oregon's favor. But even if you don't make the Big Ten championship, almost no chance you'd be left out of the college football playoff. That being said, that's all I have for my Oregon Ducks video. Make sure to check out my other predictions down below. Leave a like and subscribe.